All right. Hello, everyone, guys. Thank you. So whoever is logging in and joining this one, we have Zal, a sustainability go-to-market expert for Southeast Asia today with us and giving us his bona fide thoughts and nibbles with respect to what AI can do for sustainability and vice versa in a way, right? Welcome, Zal. I'll let you have a bit of an intro talk.
Sure. I'm good. Thanks so much for having me here. As you mentioned, I work with a lot of companies, startups, scale-ups, and even large corporates, helping them understand what their strategy is to deploy usually their climate tech or their sustainability solution. So I see companies from energy to water to plastic recycling, all across the board, all across sustainability, and how do we scale those businesses?
Oh, that's brilliant. You are advising companies how to get into the market, go-to-market strategy, positioning when it comes to sustainability and expansion plan.
It is, but more that the fact that most of these companies are founded by very smart people who tend to be scientists, academics, engineers, and they have not necessarily had the experience of going out into the field and actually having to sell a product.
Got it. Yeah.
So what one needs to do, for example, to convince a peer-reviewed journal of the validity of a project is very different to what you have to do to talk to like a Procter & Gamble or a large company, and there's a lot more at play.
Yeah.
So I kind of help them understand how to navigate that landscape better so that they can take these amazing products and companies that they've developed and scale them.
That's great. That's great. Really great to know. Thank you. So what kind of AI landscape are you seeing with this sustainability?
Well, I would say from my lens,
Yes,
there's a positive and a negative to everything, and there's no good, there's no bad, there's just what is. So there are a lot of positive things that I can see happening with AI. I do think that a lot of the narrative with AI and sustainability has very much been around the energy consumption.
Okay.
And, the World Economic Forum recently quoted I think it's like 82 or 120 terawatt hours that will potentially be consumed just for AI in the coming years. And that's I don't even know how many zeros come at the end of a terawatt hour. Like that, it just sounds like an awful lot.
Yeah, I probably put a ChatGPT prompt for that to understand it. But you're right, and that's taking the fun side away of it, but that's alarming. It is concerning from what electricity and energy sources will be consumed just for us to have an AI.
So again, positive and negative. If you tell me that all of these data centers are running on renewable energy, then we don't really have as big a problem as we think. However, I would imagine that there are very few data centers in the world that are running 100% on renewable energy. And most are going to be using some type of carbon energy source, oil and gas, coal, whatever it might be. And so to ramp up at such a huge volume, and that's just for AI, right? That doesn't include the 200,000 other things that the internet has.
Yes.
All the apps, search, email, all of that. This is just for AI. So basically, it's going to need to be added to the existing infrastructure.
Okay, yeah. And which is, if I say AI versus existing infrastructure, which is more of a culprit here?
So
I know both are into carbon emission or sustainability, but who is more?
I think that it's a question of scale. So I read somewhere that it takes, I think, about 100 to 150 Google searches to boil a kettle of water.
Oh, wow.
Energy.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So the amount it consumes that same amount of energy in 150 searches. But from my understanding, one AI search on ChatGPT is significantly more than, it's like 10 to 100 times more than one Google search. So if you now think people, as I said, people use ChatGPT for fun.
Yep.
Right? They're writing poems about their office or whatever. And in that case, the scale of AI's catch up to the rest of the internet is probably going to happen very fast.
Yeah, that's true. But then let's swing a little bit to the positives again, right? We talked about negative,
Sure.
and I've been given a massive fact by the team to share that in order to train one model, any LLM model, it takes as much as carbon as is compared to run 62 cars in a year.
Wow.
Right. So that's one negative. And again, there are like so many models coming in, right? We got the popular models and non-popular models as well. They don't want to name them, right? So you got all of those models coming in. But that's a bit of the negative part, and we'll go there in a deep anyway. But let's shift to the positive. What do you think AI can add to make it better?
So there's quite a lot. And I would imagine that all of it comes under an umbrella thinking of efficiency.
Okay.
So AI is going to be able to tell us, how can we better power our cities? What is the way that we can use electricity more efficiently? It's going to tell us about agriculture and how we can, for example, use soil and water and nutrients to be far more impactful with the agriculture that we need to feed this growing population. I think the other thing that we're, especially with efficiency, I was reading somewhere that we're going to be able to run AI on existing buildings.
Okay.
To be able to then say, okay, well, we have this building. Now, how do we make this building less carbon intensive? What can we do? Do we need to, change the coating on the outside? Or do we need to change the air conditioning systems and the HVAC systems? What can we do? And so AI is going to be able to do that at a level that I don't think it would be possible for a man. And in the same way that, now we're using AI for medical. So all of a sudden you have the best second opinion in the world because it has the most updated research, the most updated information on all the trials happening all around the world, which no individual doctor could ever have. The same way you're going to be able to do that with sustainability. So there's this new technology that's being developed in this part of the world, or there's this new material that's been discovered in this part of the world. Whatever it might be, the AI will, I imagine, be able to understand that and give you that information in a way that no consultant or advisor could.
Okay. So are you saying that we can definitely imagine a world wherein, yes, on the one side, we see a lot of negatives of burning carbon and sustainability going for a toss in some respect, but then it will eventually at some point in time when AI will take, better efficiency and adoption will increase the value. So this affects or negative effects will not be as prominent. Is that what you're saying?
Again, all that it comes down to is how people choose to use it.
Okay.
So if you look at dynamite, fine, you can use it in war.
Yep.
But you can also use it to build a tunnel through a mountain.
Well, true.
So you can use it for whatever purpose you want to use it. Now, the question is, how do we get enough people using it for the right reasons? And I'm biased, right? I'm obviously chosen my career to be in sustainability. So for me, everybody would be choosing it to, how do we make things more efficient? How do we do things better for the planet? Develop things more sustainably. But not everybody has my view. And so the idea is that I think the first thing would be that people need to be aware of the implications of themselves using it. Like in the same way, I think, I don't know if you're aware, but one jumbo jet taking off the airport here in Changi will use more fuel than a car will in its entire life, just on takeoff.
Wow.
Right?
Okay.
People aren't aware of this.
I wasn't yet.
That's why there's a huge push for sustainable aviation fuel, because if we're able to make sustainable aviation or air fuel more sustainable and reduce the carbon emissions from that, it's a huge game changer just by the magnitude of difference that it makes versus, for example, having an electric car. So
correct.
But people don't know that. And look, will that change people travel? It does for some. There's some people now in Europe that want to take the train wherever they go because it's a far more efficient use of energy than flying. And I think there's some laws in France, for example, where they're saying that no airports that are within a 3-hour train ride are able to, they've stopped having connecting flights.
Oh, so no flights.
Flights if it's a 3-hour train ride.
Wow, okay.
So because what they're saying is that by doing that, we're eliminating huge amounts of unnecessary Obviously, if you want to go Singapore to London, taking a train is a bit difficult.
Yeah, of course,
Right?
yeah.
So I think once we understand the environmental impact of what we're doing, we can then go ahead and make choices that hopefully benefit the environment. And so, yes, one of the things I'm really excited about with AI is that if you look at something that is becoming so ubiquitous in our world, the lithium-ion battery.
Yep.
Now, lithium all of a sudden has become a hugely sought after, valuable material. But I've got, good friends of mine in Australia that have a lithium extraction technology. It is a horrifically dirty business.
Oh, wow. Okay.
To extract lithium. So he's developing a clean way to do that. But the idea is that, okay, we know that a lithium-ion battery works in a particular way.
Sure. Yes.
What are the other materials that we've never tested? What are the other combinations of materials that maybe hold charge longer and could charge faster than lithium? Now, we would be able to run simulations on AI that would maybe take decades or longer to do ourselves in a lab, because you'd have to get the equipment, you'd have to get the material, you'd have to find the right people, you'd have to get the right funding, you'd have to do all of these different things. Whereas if you were to put in the right, and I'm using, the right prompt. I don't even know if it is a prompt. I would imagine that something like this would require something far more sophisticated and far more complicated.
Yes.
But you'd be able to put in all the information, you'd be able to put in all the parameters, you'd be able to, tell what results you want and say, find me a material that does this. And then say, okay, these are the 10, right? We found that these are the top 10. Let's go test them. Let's go see what works.
True.
Let's see what happens in the real world. But the fact that AI has done 99% of the heavy lifting could literally save us decades of time when it comes to researching new materials and new products. Even things like, I'm a big fan of Formula One.
Yep.
Everybody's favorite material in Formula One is carbon fiber.
Absolutely, yes.
Incredibly strong.
Lightweight.
Light.
Yes.
Now, it took a long time for them to discover carbon fiber.
Yeah.
Now, it's in everything. I saw some the other day had a carbon fiber toilet seat. But, what if there's other material that we don't know?
Yeah.
Right? I think there's a graphene fiber or something like that does the same, right? And it's again, right? If we are able to develop materials that are incredibly strong and incredibly light, then all of a sudden, if you can put it on a car, if you can put that on trains, if you can put that on any of these vehicles, trucks, you're immediately reducing the weight, which means that you're requiring less energy to move that, but still keeping the rigidity and the safety of that.
Yeah. No, that's very interesting. It's very much similar to, all right, we got this 7, 8 planets. We're living in Earth. Is there life in the other planet? Let's find it. If there is, let's go. Similarly concept. Do we have other materials?
I will say that just in an offshoot that I think if there's life on other planets, we probably don't want to be the first ones to discover it.
Yeah. Well, do you say that because you're going to exploit the planet as well? Or you say that?
Oh, I think that probably the other way around, that they would be, it seems to me that the most valuable thing in the universe, well, at least in our solar system, is water.
Oh, yeah. Well,
life cannot exist without it. From all the planets that we've seen, very few have any water on them. So I would imagine that if you are a very sophisticated spacefaring race, you're probably looking for water, and we have 80% of our planet or 75% of our planet covered in it.
So that means somebody else might be coming in as well.
Exactly. I don't know if we want to have a giant billboard to tell the world that
we have water. That's good. Coming back, right? So it is quite important to understand the real value that AI can add with these consequences. So you touched on a point by saying it's a choice. It's a choice. What do I do? It's a choice. But then the bigger question arises is, why am I doing this? Right? Why should I actually, I want to be devil's advocate for a minute, right? What if this whole sustainability is a hoax?
I would be the happiest person in the world. Really. And I've said this so many times, that if climate change is a big hoax,
yes,
I'd be the happiest person in the world. But let me put it like this.
Please.
Let me put it like this. Unfortunately, and part of the reason why I do what I do is because, unfortunately, the marketing and the communication around this has been very poorly done. If you think about something like this, if we said we want to go to war against pollution, we want to stop all pollution because we think that, I don't know if you've ever been to Delhi recently.
Oh, it's 400, 500 something, that PSI, isn't it? It's extreme.
The last time I was there, it was in the 800s. And you couldn't see, more than 2-3 meters. Scary when you're on a highway. If you were to say, we want a war against pollution, nobody is disagreeing with that. That's what this is, right? Carbon emissions is effectively pollution. And it's air pollution. And all of what is happening in Delhi is because there are factories that are not being managed correctly. There's a lot of traffic. There's a huge amount of carbon being emitted into the air, being burnt, whether that's farmland or agricultural waste or any of this stuff.
Yes.
So if we said we wanted to get rid of that, it's great. Now, the fact is, carbon, which is one part of it, is a percentage of the problem we are facing. We are facing species loss at a rate that is unprecedented in human history. And human history is small, right? So unprecedented since the last ice age, right? Biodiversity loss, right? The ocean, which, unfortunately, we're so advanced as a society, but what we've really failed to realize and grasp is that if the oceans die, we die. If the forests die, we die. If the bees die, we die. So this is not this is not about like, oh, what if it doesn't even matter. Even if there is a 10% chance that what we're saying is real. So I read this stat and I actually posted it on LinkedIn. Can I ask you to hazard a guess as to how much money the United States spent on the Cold War? So a potential defense against an invasion from then USSR, now Russia. Can you just hazard a guess?
100 billion?
$10 trillion.
Oh, wow.
And that was in 1990 dollars. So I don't know what that would be now.
Damn, yeah.
$10 trillion is what they spent. They probably spent something similar waging war in Iraq, Afghanistan, wherever it is, right?
Yeah.
So those numbers are huge. Now, I talk about that because the Cold War, they spent that money for something that never happened.
Yes.
Somebody had to say, there's a probability of this happening.
Correct.
Between 100% and 0.
Yeah.
Right? It wasn't 100 because Russia never invaded. Maybe it was 10%, 20% chance that they were going to do it. So my question is, if there is a 10 or 20% chance that humanity as we know it will perish, we should probably rethink how we are choosing to spend our money, our time, and our energy.
So that's a really critical point you mentioned there. And especially the link between positioning, right? Are we going against something and getting it done? Or are we saying something is burning, let's see what we can do, right? It's more aggressive and subtle, but though we're trying to solve the same problem. Again, I link it to COVID analogy. Everybody suffered with COVID, but they suffered with COVID and they came together and addressed it. And it was very much about, it's kind of war against COVID, right? We're going in, we need to do this, we need to do this, we need to do this. Everybody, when I say everybody, every country level, they exchange notes, they exchange best practices. What are they doing? What are they doing? Everybody's pretty open about it, right? And it was all because it was messaging, right? Positioning. Everybody got together, we got a war against COVID. So what is stopping us to say, let's have a war against sustainability or carbon emission and put a lot of solutions, best practices in place and get this done with?
I think there are a couple of things here. One is that the messaging was left to scientists.
Okay.
For the last 20, 30 years. If I tell you that over the next 5 to 7 years, or if I tell you that we have already crossed the 1.5 degrees above industrial level average temperatures on the planet that was agreed for by at the Paris climate agreement. That doesn't mean anything.
Yeah, it doesn't. Yeah.
And living in Singapore, you're like, oh, it's hot. It'll just get a bit hotter.
Yeah.
Right? Doesn't mean anything to you.
I'm sure some people are there. I don't like cold. I'm cold, but it's just gonna get a little bit hot. It's better.
Great. Yeah, exactly. I'll just make my aircon a bit colder.
Something like that.
Right?
Yeah.
Something like that. Now, these people, they chose 1.5 degrees for a reason. At 1.5 degrees, certain systems on our planet start fundamentally changing.
Operating.
Well, it's not that they stop operating.
Okay. Yeah.
Oh, they change. And the way they change is, if you look at the US,
Yeah.
for example. Oh, no, actually, Australia is a great example. Australia has huge parts of the country which over a 2 to 3 year cycle routinely go between floods and drought.
Okay.
One year, it will be huge forest fires burning the whole place.
Yeah.
The next year, the place will be flooded.
Okay. Okay.
That, you know, I find it amazing every time I turn on the news, when I do, because I try not to these days. And you hear this once in 100 year storm, once in 100 year flood, once in 100 year fire. The frequency of that once in 100 years is happening more and more. You look at what's happening in LA.
Yep.
This year.
Yeah.
Half that city burned because it went through years of drought.
Yes.
It went through, there wasn't water when they needed it in the reserves. Now, unfortunately, what has happened with climate is it's been very politicized.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And so it's people seem to be looking at it like a choice. Right?
True.
You can choose whether you want to believe or not. But frankly, climate is gravity. You can not believe in gravity. You don't say, I don't believe in gravity, I start floating off somewhere.
It's there.
It's going to happen.
Yeah.
What people don't seem to be making the connection. And I think this goes back to what you said, right? How do we not wage a war? COVID is an interesting example, because like climate change, it was unseen.
Yeah.
Like climate change, it didn't care whether you were rich or poor or where you were, right? Like climate change, it is impacting the world.
Yes, correct. Yes.
But it is a singular thing.
Mm-hmm.
COVID was a disease. We were fighting a disease. We were able to focus. Climate change is hugely complicated and hugely complex.
Yep.
You know, we are, Earth for the last 16 years has basically broken the record every year for the warmest year on record.
Wow. Okay. That's the news.
Right. So, the most basic thing that I can tell you is, and I just read I think it's the Arctic that is warming up at about 20 times the rest of the planet, because obviously it has more direct impact from the sun.
Absolutely.
And that ice melts, it has to go somewhere.
Somewhere, yeah. The water needs to go somewhere.
It needs to go somewhere.
Yes.
And I would argue that 50% of the world's largest cities, thinking off the top of my head, London, New York, Singapore, Jakarta, Shanghai, these are all built on bodies of water.
Absolutely.
Right? Singapore, the average height of Singapore is 1.5 meters above sea level. If the sea level comes at 20 centimeters, 30 centimeters, it's going to cause some serious problems. We've got a problem.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
But the fact is that there are so many contributing factors that it's hard for people to wrap their head around. We just talked about Formula One. How do I balance the fact that I do, think about sustainability and all of this? And Formula One is a hugely unsustainable business, right? Flying all these teams all over the world just for what is effectively entertainment.
And and that too, entertainment doesn't last long. It just basically 3 days of massive
race, 2 hours race,
2 hour race altogether.
And I've had to make peace with that, because we can only live in the world that we live in.
Yep, true, absolutely.
Me not watching F1 is not changing anything. Right? It's not. But there's a push there for Formula One to be more sustainable.
Well, they've been doing it right now. They're into a better, like a better V2 engines, which is more environmental friendly.
I mean,
they're getting into engines next year.
Fuels.
Yeah.
They've also done very clever things because. So I was at an event with Zach Brown a couple of years ago, and what he said really blew my mind. He said that the energy that is used, so the fuel that is used, for all 20 cars, for all 20 races across the season, is less than an A380 taking off at Heathrow.
One A380 taking off?
One A380 taking off at Heathrow.
Wow,
because these cars are hugely efficient.
Yeah, okay.
It's a part of the problem with carbon, and this is where, you know, you can talk about why people use the internal combustion engines versus batteries. Part of the problem with carbon is that a huge amount of the energy that is used in carbon is used to heat it and explode it. So we lose a lot in heat, we lose a lot in light. It's a very inefficient way of using energy. What it is very good, it is easily transportable and relatively safe, right? Okay. So unless there's a leak or something like that, it's not going to spontaneously explode.
Yeah, true.
I mean, you know, but the whole point is that it is inefficient. You know, a car engine, huge amounts of energy is spent exploding the petrol to move the piston up and down in an engine. That explosion happens hundreds of times in the engine, if you've got, depending on the size of the engine, right? So
wow, yes,
that's how it works, right? And that's what moves the crankshaft, and that's what drives the car.
Well, that, yeah.
So a battery, it's not like that.
Yeah,
it's a single moving piece, and it's far more efficient use of energy.
Yeah.
So even if you plug in and charge your car, and the energy that is being used to generate the electricity that you plug into is from a carbon power station or something like that, the amount of miles you get per watt of electricity or per joule of energy is significantly more in an electric car than it is because you're not wasting. It's the same. I mean, you know, all of these lights now, most of them are all LEDs.
Yeah.
But if you think about what the incandescent light bulb was, it was heating up a piece of metal so hot that it just happened to be bright. So that the light was an after effect of the heat. And that's why, you know, back in the day when you went to change the bulb, it was always so hot.
Yeah.
90% of the energy used was used to heating and not light. That's why these LEDs have been game changing.
What are you seeing coming into this part of the world from other part of the world with respect to what type of organizations are coming here in terms of sustainability and how they claim or how they are actually impacting it? So give me like one or two top examples that you say, yes, I saw this organization, they're really great in making this impact.
So sadly,